In the opener today, we saw an equation that looked like this. I'm just going to write it down real quick. So our equation was y equals 1/2 x minus 1. And what we did is we did a function table. We put in some numbers for x. We figured out some ordered pairs. We graphed the line. And then it turned out that that first number, that 1/2, was our slope. And it turned out that the second number here that's by itself was our y-intercept. We're going to use a letter for y-intercept. Just to be consistent, we're always going to use the same letter. We're going to use B. So B is the y-intercept. And it turns out that anytime we have an equation that's written like this, that has y out front by itself, has a number times x, and then another number added on or subtracted, then the number in front of x is always going to be the slope, and the number that's by itself is always going to be the y-intercept. So what we end up with is an equation that looks like this. And this is the slope-intercept form of a line. And at the top of your notes, it has a big y equals. I want you to write this equation down. All right, so you've got y equals mx plus b. What does m stand for? M stands for slope, right? So anytime you see an m, and in these equations, the m is always going to be the number in front of x. That's your slope. In fact, I want you to write that down right now. The number in front of, let's do this, number multiplied by x. All right, so the slope is always going to be the number that's multiplied by x. So I want you to write that down underneath the equation. Try to squeeze it in up there. Okay, that's a really good thing to remember. All right. Then the b, what is b going to be? If m is the slope, then b is the y-intercept. All right, so this number right here is the y-intercept, and that's going to be the number that's by itself. And when I say by itself, I mean not with the x. All right, so in the equation that we had in our opener today, that b was a minus 1, so our y-intercept was negative 1. It's always going to work this way as long as we have y by itself. If you have y by itself, then the number that's being multiplied by x is the slope, and the number that is by itself is going to be the y-intercept. Now, if you guys remember when we started solving equations that had x's and y's in it, I always had you solve for what? We always solved for y, right? Whenever there were x's and y's, we always got y by itself. The reason we did that is because we wanted it to be in slope-intercept form. So all those equations that we were solving when we had y, when we wanted to get y by itself, those were equations of lines that we were trying to get the y by itself, so that it was in this form, in the slope-intercept form. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a few examples, and we're just going to look at the equations. And using those equations, we're going to figure out what the slope is, we're going to figure out what the y-intercept is, and then we're going to use that information to graph the line. It's going to save us a lot of time compared to filling out an entire function table. It's going to save us a lot of time and a lot of work. All right, so the first example here, we have y equals 3x minus 5. You've already got that in your notes. So our first task is to figure out what m is and what b is. All right, so quick refresher. The slope, m, is the number that what? How do we figure out what m is? Should have this written down at the top. It's the number that is multiplied by x. What number is multiplied by x in this equation? 3. So this number right here, that 3, that's your m. It's pretty easy, right? No math to do. It's just the number that's multiplied by x. All right, the y-intercept is the number that is by itself. Well, the number that's by itself here is the negative 5. So that's your b, which is your y-intercept. Now there's one small thing I want to do here before I go over to the graph. Our slope formula is rise over run, which means we always want slope to be a fraction. 3 is not a fraction. So how can I make it a fraction? Make it 3 over 1. So instead of 3, we're going to make it 3 over 1. And that way we have a rise and a run. I want you to keep in mind, though, that the slope just tells us how steep a line is, but it doesn't tell us where a line is. So to figure out where the line's going to be, I need to do my y-intercept first. Now this is something else that's going to go back to our opener. In that second part of the opener, we gave you a point and we gave you a slope, and you graph the point and then you graph the slope and we got the line, right? You guys remember that? We're going to do the same thing here. This y-intercept is actually a point, right? It's the point where the line goes through the y-axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where -5 is on the y-axis. Where is -5 on the y-axis here? -5 on the y-axis. Yeah, so the y-axis is the vertical axis. So we're going to go down to 5, down to -5 there. And there's your y-intercept. And then after we get the y-intercept, we're going to use the slope. So starting at that point, which way do we go? What's our rise? So which way do we go for that? Since the rise is up and down, and the rise is +3 here, which way do we want to go?
Up.
Up 3, good. So we go up 3, and then our run is +1. Run is which way? Right or left? This one's positive, so we're going to go right. And we get our second point here using the slope. And now that I have 2 points, what can I do? I can draw my line. So we get those 2 points. Use a straight edge to draw your line through the 2 points. And then follow all those same rules. Make sure you use a straight edge. Make sure you extend it past the points. And then put your arrows. That's pretty easy, right? I mean, I know it's new stuff, but there's not much work that goes into this. We write down the slope, that's the number that's multiplied by x. We write down the y-intercept, that's the number that's by itself. We plot the y-intercept, we plot the slope, we draw the line, and we're done. It's a lot quicker and a lot less work than doing an entire function table to figure out what this line looks like. All right, so let's do it again here. In this example, what's the slope? 2/3, right? So the slope, again, is the number that's multiplied by x. So it's going to be 2/3. The y-intercept is the number that is by itself. That's going to be what? 3. I don't need to put the +3 there. I can just put the 3. Do I need to change this to a fraction? No, it's already a fraction, right? Do I need to change this to a fraction? No. Only the slope needs to be a fraction, right? If the y-intercept is not a fraction, that's okay. In fact, that's easier if it's not a fraction. All right, so what do we do first? The y-intercept or the slope? Y-intercept first. Where is 3 on the y-axis? Up 3. All right, so the y-axis is the vertical axis, so we're going to go up to 3. And then from there, we're going to do our slope. Our rise is going to be what? Rise 2, run 3. We get our second point. And then use those 2 points to draw your line. All right, in the next example, what's the slope going to be here? -5/7. That's your slope. And your y-intercept? Y-intercept is the number by itself, so that's going to be the 7. Which one do I plot first? Okay, I'm going to do the y-intercept first, and that's going to be where? Up 7. So we get our y-intercept right there. And then once we get our y-intercept, then we're going to plot our slope. So which way do we go first? Okay, yeah, so our rise is -5, so that means we go down 5. And then our run is +7, which means we go which way? Right 7. And we get our second point then there. And through those 2 points, we're going to draw our line. All right, one more example for today. We'll finish up the other ones tomorrow. For this example, the slope's a little tricky because the slope is the number that's multiplied by x. What number is being multiplied by x here? There's nothing in front of x, right? So does that mean it's 0? Why is it 1, Zach?
Because if x by itself, it'd be just like 1.
Yeah, x is the same thing as 1x. So we can put a 1 in the coefficient here, and so our slope is 1. Now, do I need to change that to a fraction? Yeah, it's going to be 1/1. All right, so there's nothing in front of x, so our slope's going to be 1/1. What's the y-intercept going to be? Y-intercept is -1. All right, so there's your y-intercept. So what do we do first, the slope or the y-intercept? Do the y-intercept first. Where's that going to be? Yeah, remember, the y-intercept is always on the y-axis, so it's always going to be either up or down. So here we go down 1, get our point there, and then our rise over run, which way do we go first? Rise first. What's our rise? 1, so we go up 1 and then right 1, and we get our second point there. And that's enough to draw our line. Now, you want to be careful. I could draw a line that looks like it goes through those 2 points, but that's wrong. What's wrong with that? Well, it's not really going through the middle of those points, and it's not really going in the same direction. It might not be a bad idea to go up 1 and over 1 a few times. So every time you go up 1 and over 1, you're going to get another point on the line. Okay, you don't have to do that, but you should have a line that's going to go through all of those points we get from the slope, not just those first 2. So your line should look something like this. Every time it goes up 1, it goes over 1 also.